Today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my all-time favorite Valentine DIYs. These are all DIYs that are easy on the budget, so I hope that you will find some great inspiration for creating Valentine decor for your home. We are going to start out with this sweet little Valentine garland. I will be using a 4-pack of these felt coasters that I found in the Valentine section at Dollar Tree, as well as a 4-pack of these little chalkboard tags, and these were in the crafting section or Crafter's Square aisle. I will also be using some jute twine and 1 roll of this black and white check ribbon, as well as some of this red and white baker's twine that I found. These were in a 3-pack, 3 different colors in the Crafter's Square aisle. When I purchased these, I thought that that little red and white check ribbon was on each of the coasters, which now that I think about it, it doesn't really make sense because then your drink wouldn't sit on the coaster very well. But it was just to hold these together in the package and to look cute. It's a cute ribbon. I'm going to take it off and use it. And at first I was going to cut it, but then I realized I could just pull the end off really easy. It was just glued with a little bit of glue. And I'm going to set that aside because I will be using it a little bit later. So I am going to be making a garland using these and the little chalkboard heart signs, and so I'm just going to lay them out, figure out how long I want my garland to be for where I want to hang it, and kind of the order that I want it to be in. And so that's totally up to you. You can customize it however works for you. So I liked the little red and white accent ribbon on these hearts, but I only had a little teeny tiny piece of that ribbon. So I'm using this red and white baker's twine to kind of basically do the same thing as how that ribbon was on the package. I'm just putting it through the L and then going over to the edge. I wrapped it around a couple of times, and then I'm going to tie a little bow. So I decided to use 3 of the red hearts for my garland. On the center heart, I wanted to use the ribbon that came with these coasters. I thought the bow that was already on there was a little bit, it looked more like it was made by a machine instead of by hand, so I am tying my own little bow with the remainder of the ribbon, and I'm going to put that on the center heart. I'm also going to add some of the baker's twine to the 3rd heart. This one I am tying on the opposite side of the heart than I did on the first one, and you can embellish these any way you want. You can leave them plain if you want, but I decided it would kind of balance it to have it on the left side on the left heart and on the right side on the right heart, and so that's just how I did it. Next, I'm going to create a couple of little bows for my little chalkboard hearts. So I cut a piece of twine 4 inches long approximately, and then I'm going to use some of the red and white baker's twine to wrap around 2 fingers about 8 times, and I'll tie it off in the center using that small piece of twine that I cut. After trimming the ends of the bow, then I am going to take a little bit of hot glue, and I am going to just glue this right over the hole that is in that little chalkboard heart tag, just to cover that up, and the glue will kind of go through the hole and it will stick to the tag, and then that hole is disguised. So now that my hearts are all embellished, I am going to take some of the jute twine, and I am going to figure out how long I want my garland to be, and then I'm going to lay out my hearts and have it all spaced kind of how I want it. And I have found it's easiest to turn my hearts over so that I have the back sides facing up, and then it's really easy to glue them to the twine. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much for stopping by. I do a lot of Dollar Tree DIYs, DIYs on a budget, some trash to treasure projects, and just some miscellaneous things. I would love to have you stick around, so hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the bell and set your notifications so that YouTube will notify you when I upload new videos. So as you can see here, I'm using a very scientific method of using my hand as my measurement to space my hearts. You can measure them if you want. I just kind of guesstimate. So now I'm going to take my black and white checked ribbon and I am going to cut some pieces about 5 inches long, and I am going to tie them in between each of the hearts and then one at each end. For this next project, I'll be using this palette sign from Dollar Tree. I'll also be using some more of that same spool of black and white check ribbon, and I will be using the 4th heart out of that 4-pack of coasters. And yes, I'm going to be using some more of the red and white baker's twine. I'm going to remove the hanger on my sign. You can leave it on if you want to hang this on the wall. I'm just sitting mine up on the mantle or a shelf, so I'm just removing that. And then also I'm going to just peel that label off. It comes off really easily. At least it did on mine. There were a few rough spots on my little palette sign, so I'm taking some sandpaper and just smoothing out anywhere that it needs it. And then I am going to paint my sign with some ivory chalk paint, just a white paint or off-white paint, whatever color that you want to use works fine. I just wanted to kind of make this a little bit brighter and not leave it the natural wood. Then once the paint is dry, I'm going to take a piece of my black and white check ribbon and I'm going to attach that across the top and the bottom of the little palette sign. Next I'm going to take my red felt heart and I am going to use a piece of black cardstock. This is just a scrap that I had, and I'm going to trace around the heart. You could use black felt or you could use even that craft foam, just something on the back of this so that the letters are black. And I'm going to cut that out a little bit smaller than actually what I traced, and then I'm going to glue that to the back of the felt heart. So before I glued my heart on, I wanted to kind of figure out how I wanted to embellish this a little bit. So I'm just playing around with some things, and I decided that I didn't really like the ribbon going across both the top and the bottom, so I decided to take the ribbon across the top off and just use a bow on the top instead. So I wanted it to look like my little heart was hanging, so I am taking a piece of that baker's twine and just adding a little hanger to the back. And I'm just making sure I have everything positioned correctly, and then I'm going to use the hot glue gun and glue it down. Then I decided I wanted to add one more embellishment to this, so I'm going to make another one of those bows using the baker's twine like I did before. This time I'm making it a little bit bigger. I'm wrapping it around 3 fingers, still about 8 times to make the little bow. Then I'm going to glue the little bow to the bottom right corner across that ribbon. And then for a finishing touch, I wanted to find a little black button. So I went searching in my big button tin. This came from my grandmother, who lived to be 108 years old. She was born in 1902. She lived through the Depression. She saved everything. But I am so happy to have all of these buttons from her. There's some really old ones in here, and just some really cool ones, and they're fun to use when I am crafting. But if you don't have a huge button stash, you can pick up a container of buttons at Dollar Tree where you can find something that will work great for this. So I just found a tiny little black button I'm going to put right in the center of that twine bow, and then it's finished. For this project, I was inspired by this snowflake that I made last year for winter, and I thought it would be fun to do something similar for Valentine's. For this, I picked up an unfinished wood heart from Dollar Tree, as well as this smaller chunky wood heart. And I'm also going to be using one of these 12-inch dowels. They come in a package of 10 in the Crafter's Square section. And I'm going to be using some of these little wood roses that are in the Valentine section. I'll also be using a little bit of this Waverly Antique Wax. You could use a brown paint or a stain. I'm just going to be staining my wood pieces. I'm going to start by first filling that hole with some hot glue. You could use some wood filler. I like the hot glue because it dries quickly, and if you put like a metal ruler behind it on the right side of your project, once the glue cools, then it just pops right off and you have a nice smooth surface. Now I'm going to take some of my antique wax and I'm watering it down a little bit just because I don't want it to be too dark, and I'm going to stain all of my wood pieces. Once the stain is dry, I am going to find a drill bit that is the same size as my dowel, and I am going to drill into the center of that small chunky heart, just down about a quarter to a half inch, just so that the dowel will fit down in there and I'll have a place to glue it so it will make it more sturdy. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this super glue, wood glue that I also picked up at Dollar Tree, and I'm going to add just a little dot of hot glue as well, and just put that dowel into the hole and then let that dry thoroughly. Now I'm going to take my little wood roses, and honestly I was not sure how I wanted to embellish this heart. So I just took out all the little wood roses and arranged them in different ways on the heart. I didn't know if I wanted to use the colored heart or colored roses, the red and the pink, or if I just wanted to use all of the natural wood color. And so I just played with it. So you can arrange these however you like. Get creative and just play with it until you find something that you like the look of. So I first pictured just putting the roses all over the heart like this, and I kind of was going to go with something like this with a few of the pink roses mixed in with the natural wood. I kind of like this, but then I found in my stash this little decor piece, and it had the raised wood love word on it, and so I decided just to remove that using this little spatula, and I just did this really carefully so I didn't break it. And I decided to kind of go a different route on my heart and put fewer of the roses on and add this little love word as well. I did want it to show up a little better though, so I am taking some of my chiffon cream chalk paint and just going over that to make it a lighter color. And I really like how this looks, so I'm going to go ahead and attach these roses and the love word just using my hot glue gun. One thing to keep in mind when you fill your hole with hot glue on your piece, it doesn't get covered up by stain. My original plan was to cover it up with one of those wood roses. However, I kind of changed my design, so now I'm using some of this lace ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I'm just making a cute little plain bow to put on that. I think it just gives it a little romantic finishing touch. The last step is to attach the heart to the wooden dowel base, and I'm just using hot glue for this, and just make sure that the point of the heart base is facing forward and that you have that lined up just how you want it. For this project, I am using this little square bank that I found at Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be using some of these really pretty pink roses from the Valentine section, as well as this little heart decor piece that I found. And I'm also going to be using some of these little lights that look like gemstones or kind of like pink diamonds. I'm also going to be using some black chalk paint as well as some 100% acetone fingernail polish remover. That's what I'm going to use to get that design off of the front of this bank. So I'm going to remove the back of the frame and carefully remove that paper because I do want to reuse that. And then I'm just going to use a paper towel and some of the fingernail polish remover and scrub that design. And you can see it is coming off, but it is taking a little bit of elbow grease, so I decided to get a razor blade and kind of carefully scrape off the design and then use the acetone to remove the residue that's left. And you can see that that does a real nice job of cleaning up that glass really well. So my plan when I first started this project or had the idea for it was to take the roses and to pull them off the stems and then put them behind the glass as a whole rose. However, these were actually too large for this little frame and the roses were just going to get all scrunched up. So I decided to pull the roses apart and cut the petals apart so that I just had rose petals. And to do this, it really only took, I think, 3 roses, maybe 4, to complete this project. So it doesn't take very many at all doing it this way. Then I took my string of lights and I arranged them so that they were evenly spread out, and I'm using just a little bit of hot glue to tack them down in a couple of places along the edge of the frame just so that it will hold them in place, because when I set this up, the weight of those little acrylic gems will kind of pull the lights down if they're not secured in any way. And because I don't want the wires from my lights to show from the front side of my project, I'm going to take some of the rose petals and I am going to just tack them to the wires. So I'll just slide the petals kind of underneath the wires since we're working from the back side, and just secure those so that they kind of hide the wires. And one thing to note here is that you do want your light string end to kind of be on the side where the coin slot is, because that's going to be the bottom of our little project here, and we don't want it to show, and so you don't want the wire from the light strand to be coming out of the top of your project. So now I'm going to just start filling in my rose petals all around, and I'm going to fill this up full and make sure all the spaces are covered. And for the ones in the back, you can see I didn't even cut the petals apart because I'm just putting them on the back side. They're not really going to show, they're just filling up the space. So then I'll put the back on my picture and make sure that I like the spacing of the lights and the petals and it all looks good. And then I'm going to attach my battery pack. I'm just going to use some hot glue on this, and I am making sure that the part of the battery pack where you open it to change the batteries is accessible, as well as the switch where you turn them off and on. Now I'm going to take one of those little wood hearts from that decor piece and just separate it from the others, and I'll remove the hanger, and then I'm also going to fill the holes on this, and then I'm just going to use some black chalk paint and give it a good coat of paint. And if you can't find these exact wood hearts, I have seen a lot of different designs of wood hearts in the Valentine section at Dollar Tree. So you can choose any of them that will fit on the front of your frame to do this project with. And I decided just to dry brush a little bit of off-white paint onto this just to kind of go with the frame. I didn't do anything with the frame. I left it exactly the way it came, and it was kind of an off-white and had black dry brushed on it. So I thought just kind of doing the inverse of that would make it coordinate really well. Then I'm just going to center that on the front of the glass and attach it using a little bit of hot glue. And I think this looks really pretty even without the lights on, so it makes a nice decor piece in the evening when you want to have the lights on, or in the daytime when you just want to leave them off. It's beautiful either way. For this next project, I'm going to be using this jumbo craft heart I found at Dollar Tree for just $1.25. That's a great deal. I'll also be using a little bit of this lace ribbon. It looks kind of like crocheted ribbon. And I'm going to be using more of these pink roses. I think these are just so pretty for Valentine's. And for this project, I used a total of 48 roses. I'm going to start by taking a 12-inch piece of the lace ribbon, and I'm going to fold it in half and then glue the ends to the top of the heart with some hot glue so that I have a nice little hanger. Then I'm going to remove all of my roses from the stems, and like I said, I think I used 48 roses for this, so there's 6 on each stem, so you're going to need 8 stems of roses, and I'm going to start at the very top of my heart, and then I'm going to go all along the outside edge of the heart. And I did find it easier to use a stylus, or you can even use a pencil or something, a dowel maybe, to poke a hole down into the styrofoam, and then I just added a little bit of hot glue into the hole to hold those roses in, and then push the stems in. I felt like it was easiest going all the way around the heart on that outside edge and then filling in the center from there. And I did not put any roses on the back of the styrofoam because I want this to be able to hang on the wall kind of flat, and if you put roses on both sides, for one thing, it's going to take a lot of roses and they're not going to be seen because it's going to be up against the wall and it's going to hang funny on the wall. So I just left the back of the heart plain. You could paint it if you don't like the white, but like I said, it's not really going to be seen, so I just left mine. And I would just say, don't chintz on the amount of roses that you put in here. You want them to be put in there tightly and close together so that you can't see any of the white styrofoam, and it just makes it look so full and high end. And so for less than $10, I made this, and I saw one on the Wayfair website that was $50. And honestly, I liked the looks of mine better. For this next project, I'm going to use this wall decor piece from Dollar Tree. And just for reference, this one is about 8.5 inches square. I'll also be using 4 of these styrofoam heart picks. They come in various styles in a package, and I'm just using the sticks, so it doesn't really matter what the tops of them look like. Then I'm also going to be using some of these little wooden hearts. And I found these arrows in the crafting aisle, so I'm going to be using one of these as well. And I'm going to be using 10 of the smaller size popsicle sticks or crafting sticks. And for paint, I'm going to be using black and white chalk paint. First, I'm going to take my white chalk paint and I'm going to be painting that inside portion of this wall art, and I decided just to remove it from the frame because I'm going to leave the frame black, and that way I won't have to worry about not getting white paint on it. And I did give mine a couple of coats of paint using my heat tool to dry the coats in between. And while that final coat is drying, I am going to take my same paintbrush with just a very little bit of paint on it and dry brush some white onto the black frame just so it doesn't look so just stark black. If you're not a fan of dry brushing, you could totally leave this the black color. You could even paint it a different color, but you know, if you've watched my channel very long at all, you know I love my dry brushing. Let me know down in the comments, are you a fan or not a fan of dry brushing? And speaking of dry brushing, I am going to take a little bit of black paint and dry brush on that white center portion of the frame that I painted. And I did get a little streak there that's just a little too dark for my liking, so I am going to take some of my white paint and just kind of go over that and lighten it up. So don't worry if you do get a little bit too much, it's just paint. You can even repaint over the whole thing and start over, but don't be afraid to try new techniques and try things with paint because usually it's not hard to fix. Next, I'm going to take my craft sticks and my miter shears, and I'm going to cut these. I first cut the ends off of the popsicle sticks because they're rounded, and I'm using my miter shears at an angle, so it's cutting an angle. You could cut them straight if you want, but I cut off both of the rounded ends, and then I'm basically kind of cutting them in half. And so I'm doing this so that I have 10 pieces, and they come out to be, I think, about 2.5 inches long. The link to all my favorite crafting tools, including these miter shears, is down in the description box. I highly recommend these. They are great for cutting things like craft sticks and dowels. Then I'm going to paint all of my little sticks using my black chalk paint. I'm going to set those aside to dry. Then I'm going to take my white piece that I painted and put that back into the frame so that I can start adding the embellishments to it. So once again, I will use my little miter shears just to snip off those styrofoam hearts, and then I'm going to be using the sticks to make a little tic-tac-toe board. I love the fact that these are red. I don't have to paint them because that's the color I want them to be, so it makes it super easy. And then I'll just save those little hearts to use in another project. Once I have the sticks laid out so that the spacing looks good to me, I'm going to use a pencil just to mark where they're at so that I know where to put glue down to glue them onto the board. Now I'm going to start adding my hearts and my X's to this, and I actually realized I made one too many X's. I needed 5 X's and I made 6, but I put the 3 hearts in a diagonal row, and then I'm going to put in X's in all of the squares except for the bottom right hand corner where I will put another heart. I'm making mine as a wall decoration, but if you'd wanted to just make the X's and have the X's and the hearts loose so that you could actually use this just for a cute little tic-tac-toe game, that would be great, especially if you have kids or grandkids. They would love that. However, since I am making mine to hang on the wall, I am going to add the arrow to it, and I think I want to use the black arrow. I think it just shows up better than the white one, and so I'm just going to use that and glue it across the 3 hearts that are in the diagonal, and then this piece is done. For this project, I am using 3 of these plastic heart ornaments, and these actually open up so you can fill them with candies or little goodies, but I am going to be using them in a much different way for this project. I'm also going to be using some various colors of yarn that work well for Valentines. And I picked up one of these cute little baskets that Dollar Tree is carrying now as well. To start off with, I'm just going to use a pair of wire cutters to snip off that little plastic hanger at the top of the ornament because I don't want to have that on there. And then I'm going to use some hot glue and my yarn, and I am just going to be wrapping this all around the heart in different directions. Now, when you first start this, you will have to tack it down with hot glue in various places, but once you get a good amount of strands down, then you can wrap it and it will kind of hold itself in place and you won't have to put glue so often. And my goal here is just to get this heart completely covered with the yarn so that you can't see any of the shiny red plastic underneath. So now that it's mostly covered, I will need to kind of be a little more strategic of my placement of my yarn and use my glue to tack it down in those places that need covered. And so this project is not hard, but it does take a little bit of time, but I think it's totally worth it. Once I'm happy with it, I'm just going to add a little hot glue and trim off the end of my yarn. Then I'm going to take a look at it, and if there's anywhere where the yarn is kind of separated and you can see that plastic underneath, I'm just going to take my hot glue gun and put a little bit of glue in there and then just kind of pinch it together so that you aren't able to see the plastic. Then I'm going to repeat this procedure with my other two hearts and the different colors of yarn. This is such an easy project, but I think it is just really sweet for Valentine's. And then I'm just going to arrange my hearts in the little basket. This next project turned out to be one of my favorites, and for this I am using this wood piece from Dollar Tree as well as this wood love sign, and I'm going to be using this little rock painting kit. All of these things are from Dollar Tree. I'll also be using some of these small raised dot stickers. And I'm going to use some white and black chalk paint. And I know here I showed an off-white paint, but I'm actually going to use white for my finished project. And I'm going to be using a couple of colors of craft paint, a couple of shades of pink, as well as a nice pretty green. I'm going to start with this cute love sign from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to remove the hanger, the jute twine hanger from the back of it, and I am going to leave those little hooks on the back of it in the remote possibility that I want to hang this sign up, but I think when I'm finished with it, I think it'll probably be just something that I sit on a shelf or a table. So now I'm going to take those little raised dot stickers, and they actually come in a strip, which for this project I wish they didn't, but probably for other projects it would be great. But I am going to take them and I'm going to cut each individual dot apart, and then I am going to line them up all the way around that little heart that is the center of the O. Next, I'm going to take my white paint and I'm going to paint my entire sign even over those little beads because I want it all to be white. If you wanted them to be red, then just paint your sign first and then apply your little stickers. I'm thinking you might want to put a little glue on them to help them stick to the paint, though they were pretty sticky with just the adhesive that was on them. I did have one that didn't want to stay on, so I glued it, but the rest of them seemed to stick pretty well just to the wood. And I did paint the whole sign on the edges and the back as well. I did, however, leave the inside of the heart because I am going to paint it a different color. Now I'm going to take that wood piece that I picked up at Dollar Tree and I'm going to paint it with the black chalk paint. While that's drying, I'm going to take this little rock painting kit and I'm going to take the paints that came with it and just throw them away. They were dried out and useless anyway, and that little paintbrush is not really good for a whole lot either, so I'm just going to get rid of that. And I'm going to use my own craft paints and a small little paintbrush to paint this pretty little rock. At first I was going to paint all of the roses this pink color, but I decided to add in a lighter pink color, and so I'm just kind of randomly painting different roses, the two different pink colors. And I am just painting the raised part of the roses, and that way the white kind of shows through and gives it kind of an outline, and I think it makes them show up a little bit better than if I just painted the whole area, because then it would just kind of look like a pink blob. Once I have the roses painted, I'm going to use this light, pretty spring green to paint the leaves. And then I'm going to paint the rest of the rock with my black chalk paint. Next, I'm going to take the darker pink color, and I'm going to use that to paint the inside of the heart on the love sign. I really like how this gives it just kind of a subtle pop of color. Then I'm going to lightly dry brush using some black chalk paint over the top of this sign, and this is really going to bring out that heart shape where I put the stickers around that, because the dry brushing is going to go right over the top of that, and it's going to give the letters a little bit more definition, because the dry brushing will kind of stick to the edges of the letters, and so I think that the dry brushing really helps with the details of this sign. And then I'm going to take my white chalk paint and dry brush a little bit over that black piece of wood as well. I also decided to take some of those wood roses that I used in the very first project in this video and paint two of them the lighter color of pink and one the darker color of pink that I used on that heart rock. We're going to use these just to kind of tie everything together. And I'll paint the leaves on these the same color of green as well. Then once everything is painted and thoroughly dried, I'm going to put a layer of matte finish Mod Podge over this, or any clear sealer will work. So now I'm just going to lay out everything how I want to assemble it. So I have the love sign on top, and then the rock next, the heart-shaped rock next to it. I'm going to put a couple of those roses on the left side and one on the right side. And then I cut out with my Cricut machine the words "never fails." So that I have "love never fails," and I'm going to put that here on the black piece of wood on the bottom of my project. Now here's a little tip for you. If you're going to use your Cricut machine, you want to make sure that you're using the wood side or the back side of this wood sign, not the one that has the smooth surface on it. So I should have known better, but I put it on the other side, and when I peeled my transfer paper off, you know what happened. My paint came off with it. And so save yourself the trouble. Make sure you use the back of the wood sign that doesn't have that smooth surface on it to put your vinyl letters on. So now that I have my lettering on, now I can place my little flowers. I'm just going to attach those with some hot glue, two on the left side, one on the right. Now I'm going to position the love sign and mark where I want to attach it. And so I'm kind of just eyeballing how it's going to look with the heart rock, and then marking with a pencil where I want it to go so that I know where to put my hot glue. I'm going to hot glue the love sign down first, and I'm just adding glue where I put the marks so that it doesn't show once the love sign is attached. So now I need to attach my little heart-shaped rock, and to do this I'm going to be using a craft stick, and so I am going to just take one of these small popsicle sticks and attach it to the back of the E on the love sign, and then that heart's going to get glued to that too. It's just going to help stabilize it. Now that I have my craft stick in place, I'm going to set my rock up there, and I am going to figure out what angle I want it to sit, and then I'm going to put a mark right underneath the point at the bottom of the heart. That way I will know right where to put my hot glue. Then I'll go ahead and add my hot glue to the front of that craft stick and right on that mark that I made, and then just set my little heart-shaped rock right on there and hold it in place until the glue sets up a little bit.
Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I want to introduce myself. My name is Chantel, and this is Love and Life's Journey DIY. I love to do Dollar Tree DIYs and DIYs on a budget. So if you enjoy that too, then make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss out on any new projects that are coming up this year. Today's video is a compilation of all of my favorite Valentine DIYs that I have done, but I am going to be coming out with lots of new videos and new projects for 2025, so you'll want to make sure that you're subscribed and have your notifications turned on so that you won't miss out on anything. But for now, let's get back to more Valentine DIYs on a budget.
For this project, I found this sign at Dollar Tree, and I just really liked the design. I loved the flowers, I liked the colors, and I even didn't really mind the glitter that was on it. But I wanted to elevate it in some way. And I also found this baker's twine that has 3 different colors that are all in this sign. So I picked that up, and we're going to see what we can do with this sign. So I decided that I wanted to cut the letters apart. So I'm using my miter box and saw, and even though the sign is a little bit wider and doesn't lay flat down in the miter box, I can still cut a straight edge with this. I'm just holding it at an angle and making sure that my saw is lined up with the guides. You can also cut these signs apart using a straight edge and a razor knife. It takes a little bit more effort, and you have to press pretty hard and go over it quite a few times, but you can do it. So if you don't have a miter box and saw, that is another way that you can do that. And of course, this is the perfect time to use one of my favorite crafting tools, my little cordless rechargeable vacuum. This is perfect for sawdust, for glitter, for all kinds of things. And if you do a lot of crafting, you would love having one of these. I think they're less than like $15, and I use mine all the time. So it just picks up things so well, and then you can just empty it right out and recharge it, and it holds a charge for a long time. So I love mine. I highly recommend it. Now that I have my letters cut apart, I'm going to stack them up, and I am going to mark on the top corners where I want to drill a hole because I want to be able to string these up kind of like a banner. And so I'm just going to mark on the top one, and then I will use a drill and drill bit to drill through them to make holes in all 4 letters. Next, I'm going to paint the backs of my letters using white chalk paint, and this is just to give it a nice finished look. And I'm not going to paint the edges of the signs though, because I'm going to add some of that baker's twine around the edges of the signs just to give it a more unique finish. So I'm going to wrap my baker's twine around the edge of the letters, and I'm going to be attaching it with a little bit of hot glue. And you want to be careful not to get too much because it can get messy looking real quick if you get too much glue. So I'm just going to use a very little bit to tack it down as I go, and I'm going to wrap the twine around 3 times to cover the edges of the letters, and I'm using a different color of twine on each letter. This is definitely a little more time consuming than just painting the edges, but I really like the texture and just the uniqueness that it adds to this project. Once I have all my letters wrapped with the baker's twine, then I am going to take a little bit heavier of a string. You could use ribbon or any type of cord that you have, but I'm just going to use the string that I had on hand and put it through the holes so that the string is on the back side of the letters, and just hang it up like a banner. For this next project, we'll be making this beautiful faux iron heart. For this project, you will need 2 of these garden fence pieces found in the gardening section at Dollar Tree. Some craft paint. I think that this chalk paint from Waverly in the color of ivory works really well. And you can find this at Walmart. I believe it's about $4. You will need a hot glue gun and glue sticks. And some tools that you will need or that might be helpful are a box cutter, wire cutters, scissors, a paintbrush, sandpaper, and I would recommend a cutting board as well. First, we're going to cut the garden fence pieces out in some specific shapes to create our heart. So the first one that we're going to do is what I'm calling the main piece, and it's going to be the top of the heart. You can just use a good pair of scissors to cut this, but I did find it helpful to use the wire cutters in several places. Just the angle that you need to cut in some places, different tools work better. I even found that in some places using the box cutter to kind of score it before I cut it with scissors or the wire cutters was helpful. And then you just want to trim off any rough edges, and this is what the first piece looks like, or the main piece. Then you'll need to cut 3 of these X-shaped pieces with the arrow sticking out of one end. Unfortunately, you can't get all the pieces out of one garden fence. You will have to use the second garden fence to get your third X. You will need to leave one of the X pieces exactly like it is, and then the other 2, we're going to cut them apart. And the way we're going to cut it is just right down the center, but leave the arrow on one side. So you're going to have a C-shaped piece, and then the other one will be a C-shaped piece with the arrow on it. And so this is what it should look like. And you will do this with 2 of the X pieces. It's important when you cut these apart that you end up with the 2 C-shaped pieces with the arrows in them so that they will sit this way with the arrows on the outside edge. So you will have 6 pieces total, and this is what they should look like. Once you have your pieces cut, you'll want to take your scissors and just trim off any rough edges or pointy edges and try to make them look rounded and more uniform. And I found that in some of the thicker places, the wire cutters worked well, but most of the time you could just use your scissors. Then just take a piece of sandpaper and sand off any rough edges. So I'm not sure what happened to the video of me gluing these first 2 pieces together, but you'll just take the big main piece and then glue the X on top of it with the arrow pointing down like you see here. You will want to make sure that your center line of the main piece and the arrow all line up in a straight line. Then you're going to take the C pieces that have the arrow on them, and you're going to lay the arrow part over the top of those curls at the bottom of that X piece. And you'll just have to kind of play with it till you get it in position. And I have the top of that C piece up against the main piece, and you just play with it till it looks symmetrical and you like the way it looks, and then just glue it together with your hot glue. One tip I have for you is to use a little scraper. I have one from Pampered Chef that I got with some stoneware that I bought. I have several of them, and so I took one and I use this to clean off excess hot glue. This kind of helps prevent my fingers from getting burned, and it takes the extra hot glue off really easily. If you don't have a little scraper like this, I'm sure you can find something else around the house to use. I just had a lot of these, so I just used one of those, but probably even a little piece of cardboard or something would work. Next, we're going to close in the sides of the hearts by using those 2 C pieces that we cut, and I just lined them up on the heart. I put it so that the bottom curl is right up next to that curl of the pieces that we just put on, and then the top curl kind of goes over the top of the one that is on the main piece, and you just kind of have to play with it and line it up till it looks good to your eye and how you like it. It's not going to line up perfectly, but it really doesn't matter once you get it all painted and put together. The main thing is to just have the edges kind of follow a nice smooth line to make it have that heart shape. So this is what it looks like once it's all glued together. And then I'm just going to take my chalk paint and just brush the paint all over this piece. And I found that a bristle brush worked better than a foam brush. I felt like I could get into the little cracks and crevices a little bit better with the bristle brush, because I could kind of just push it in there really well without the paint blobbing everywhere. So I'm just going to paint the whole thing. Once that's dry, then I'll turn it over and kind of fill in the edges on the back side. You don't have to paint the back side completely, but it will help the edges be painted if you turn it over and paint it from the back side. I did find that about halfway through, I needed to turn it over and clean up any drips on the front so that you don't get any blobs of paint because those will show. So just turn it over a couple of times when you're doing the back side and clean up those drops. Once I was done painting the back, I did turn it over and I gave the front a second coat of paint. Once the paint was completely dry, I took a piece of sandpaper and I just sanded off a little bit of the white paint in various places so that the black shows through. This gives it an aged look and that farmhouse look, and just makes it look weathered and old, and I just really like that effect. And so I just did that all over the heart. You can do that as little or as much as you like. If you accidentally sand off too much in a place and you don't like it, then you can just paint over that, let it dry, and sand it a little bit again. When you're all finished, if you like, you could spray this with a clear sealer. I would recommend using a matte finish so that it keeps that old look and doesn't look shiny. Then I'm just going to add a hanger to the back of this, and I'm just going to take a little piece of the scrap that I had left from the garden fence, and I'm just taking it from one of the little arched pieces and fitting it to that little center part, and I'm just going to hot glue that in the middle there, and then that will make a place for a nail to catch so that I can hang this on the wall. So here it is, all finished and hanging on the wall. I love how it turned out, and it only cost $2 to buy those two fence pieces from Dollar Tree. The paint I already had on hand, as well as the hot glue and the other supplies to make it. So for $2, I could not be happier. For this project, I will be using these 3 picture frames from Dollar Tree. All of my supplies will be from Dollar Tree unless I let you know otherwise. I'll also be using some of this burlap trim. And I'll be using 2 packages of these decorative reeds. I found these at my Dollar Tree store in the candle aisle. They were close to where the scented oils are. I'll be using some of this chiffon cream chalk paint. I picked this up at Walmart, and I like to store my paint in a canning jar because I hate dealing with paint can lids. I'm also going to be using 2 tumbling tower blocks. I'm going to start by removing the stand on the back of each of the frames. I'm going to be hanging this on the wall, and so this will allow it to lay flatter against the wall by removing these. Then I'm going to take a little bit of the chalk paint and wipe the excess off on a paper towel and then just brush this over the frames. I just want to lighten them up a little bit. I really like the finish on these frames, but I do want them to be just a little bit lighter. And since I am impatient and don't want to wait for paint to dry, I'm going to use my heat tool and dry the paint on this. I do have all of my favorite crafting tools linked in the description box below, so if you're curious about what I like to use for crafting, you can check them out there. This heat tool is certainly one of my favorite tools. Now I'm going to turn 2 of the picture frames upside down, and I'm going to place my 2 little tumbling tower blocks in between as spacers just to keep this even. And then I'm going to use some of this burlap trim to attach the 2 frames together. And to do this, I'm just cutting a couple of short pieces of the trim, and then I'm going to hot glue it to the frame, just making sure everything is lined up. And because this trim will show from the front of the project, I am making sure that it is spaced about the same distance from each side, and I'm just using that inner frame as a guide. Once I have those glued together, I'm going to remove the tumbling tower blocks, and then I am going to add my third frame using this same process. Next, I'm going to take one package of these decorative wreaths and I'm going to arrange them until I like the way that they look, just kind of putting them at different heights. And then I will take a piece of this lace ribbon and just tie it around the stems of these just to tie them together in a little bundle. I'm going to be attaching this bundle to the side of the bottom frame, and I do want the flowers to stick up so that they overlap onto that middle frame, but I'm going to trim the sticks on the bottom so that they don't hang down below the bottom edge of that bottom frame, and that way it will just look a little bit neater. So now that I have those attached to my frame, I'm going to move up to the top frame and I'm going to remove the flower off of the stick and I'm going to cut just the tops off of the little reeds, and I'm going to create just a little floral arrangement here on the corner of the frame. After I've secured those with some hot glue, I'm going to take a little piece of that lace ribbon. I'm going to tie a knot in the center and glue that down just to embellish it and give it just that little extra touch, and also it hides those stems. And then this project is finished other than putting some pictures in it. For my next project, I will be using this wood frame that I picked up at Dollar Tree. These are new and they're such a great size. I'll also be using this metal love sign and a few of these pink flowers. I think these are perfect for spring. I'll also be using some of that lace ribbon, as well as one of these natural wood heart stickers. And for paint, I'm going to be using this light green colored acrylic craft paint. I'm going to start by removing that twine hanger and the label off of my wood frame. I really like the wood grain in the center of this piece, so I'm going to leave that alone, but the frame itself is actually just an unfinished kind of MDF material, and so it doesn't look that great, so I'm going to paint mine this light green color. I think it's kind of got that romantic feel, but it's also perfect for spring. Once my green paint is dry, I'm going to take some of this chiffon cream chalk paint. It's the perfect color to coordinate with that love sign. And I'm going to dry brush out just along the green parts of my frame. Next, I'm going to cut off that twine hanger from that love sign, and then I am going to figure out exactly where I want to position it. So I am just putting some little marks so that I know where to glue it down. I just kind of measured so that it was centered, and then I'm using some Gorilla Hot Glue to glue this down. If you want a more permanent bond, you could use some E6000 or some super glue. Now I'm going to pull a few of the little sprigs off of my flowers, and I'm going to be using just 4 pieces of this, and I'm going to do 2 on each side and just kind of space them, lay them out so that I like the way it looks, and then I'll glue those down with some hot glue as well. Next, I'm going to use my lace ribbon, and I'm going to just tie a simple bow, just a regular shoelace bow, and place that in the center between my flowers. And then I'm going to add a little natural wood heart on the top of that bow, and that's all I'm going to do to embellish this. At first, I just added the original jute twine hanger back onto my sign, but it didn't want to hang quite right, and so I did end up just adding my own jute twine hanger to this. For this next project, I will be using the larger ring from this package of bamboo rings. I'll also be using 2 packages of these wood curl roses. And I'll be using some of this burlap trim, as well as some of these faux pearl beads and some of the lace ribbon. If you aren't able to find the bamboo rings, you could use an embroidery hoop or even just one of the metal rings or hoops that they sometimes carry at Dollar Tree as well. I'm going to start by adding some of the crocheted lace ribbon. I'm starting with a loop, and I'm just um, gluing these to the hoop, just kind of spacing them out and randomly kind of going from side to side. And you'll see here in a minute why I'm doing this, but it's basically just going to be lace loops that go in between my little wood curl roses. Next, I'm going to add those wood roses. I'm just hot gluing those on top of the lace ribbon and just kind of fitting them together, just arranging them how they want to fit naturally together. I picked up 2 packages of the wood roses for this project. That's 8 roses. However, I only used 6 while making this project. It will really just depend kind of on the size of the hoop that you use. Now I'm going to take some pieces of that burlap trim, and I'm going to cut them about an inch and a half or so long, and then fold them in half to make a little loop, and then just hot glue them, tucking them in just here and there wherever I feel like I might need a little bit more filler. Now I'm going to take some of those faux pearl beads and just hot glue them in the center of each rose. Then to finish this off, I'm going to take a piece of the burlap trim and just create a loop hanger at the top of my wreath. This next project is super simple. I'm going to be using this love sign, and I got this actually for 50 cents at Dollar Tree just because the jute twine hanger was broken. And for this project, I'm actually going to be removing it anyway. I'll also be using this black and white checked ribbon. And I picked up these little miniature roses at Walmart, and they were very affordable, but they are perfect for this project. So I'm going to start, like I said, by removing that jute twine hanger. And I am going to leave the little eucalyptus leaves on the bottom of this. They are kind of sparse, but I just spread them out, and it's going to give a good base for adding my florals to. I don't want to use all of these roses, so I'm just going to cut off about half of them and trim them down to size and figure out exactly what I want to use to add to this project. Next, I'm going to make a bow using my black and white checked ribbon. I'm going to just make about 4 or 5 loops on each side, just as you can see here, looping it back and forth. And then I'll make a loop in the center, and then I'll tie it off using a chenille stem or a pipe cleaner, or you could use just floral wire or even a bread tie. And then I'll attach my flowers with some hot glue and attach my bow at the bottom. For this project, I will be using this sign from Dollar Tree. This is a pretty standard size that they carry all the time. It's about 9¼ inches wide and about 13½ inches tall, and you can find it usually during any time at Dollar Tree. And this one I actually got after summer for just 50 cents. I will also be using 1 pack of these wooden rulers and 1 package of these little wood heart ornaments and some jute twine. All of these are from Dollar Tree. Instead of the traditional red or pink for Valentine's, I am going to use this blue color. This is called Cascade. It's by Folk Art. And I picked it up, I think, at Hobby Lobby or Walmart. And then I'm also going to be using some ivory colored chalk paint, as well as some Waverly Antique Wax. I'm going to start by removing the hanger off of the sign as well as the label, and then I am going to use a little sandpaper just to go over where that label was to remove any of the adhesive that might be left. And then I'm going to give my sign a couple coats of that Cascade blue paint. While my first coat of paint is drying, I'm going to take my wooden rulers. I'm going to remove the little plastic stickers that have the measurements on them. They just peel right off. And then I'm going to sand the rulers down a little bit to remove the adhesive off of those. Then I'm going to measure how long I want my rulers to be. They're going to be the same width as my sign. So I'll mark those, and then I'm going to use my miter box and saw to cut those down. And I know I've said it many times before, but this is one of my favorite crafting tools. It's easy to get out just to make simple cuts like this. I will have it linked below in my favorite crafting tools. And I did sand off the edges where I cut the rulers just to get rid of any splinters. And then I'm going to give these a couple coats of paint as well. Next, I am marking the center point on the top and the bottom of my sign, and I'm going to draw a line vertically down the center of my sign. And I'm just using a pencil, and then I am going to kind of smear the pencil using a paper towel to kind of just spread that line out a little bit. And this is to make it look like I have two separate boards. Next, I'm going to add some dry brushing to my sign. I'm using the Waverly Antique Wax. You can use just a dark brown or a black paint. Just get a very little bit on a dry brush and lightly brush this across your project until it's as dark as you want. And you can see I'm going over that center line a little darker because I want that to look kind of like the shadow of the seam where the two pieces of wood would come together if you had two separate pieces of wood. And then I'll also dry brush on my two smaller ruler pieces as well. Now I want to mark where I want to put the rulers on my sign, so I just kind of laying them on there, and I decided to mark 2 inches up from the bottom and 2 inches down from the top, and that's where I'm going to place my rulers, and I'm just going to attach them with some hot glue. I always like to use Gorilla Glue sticks in my hot glue guns just because they hold a little bit stronger than just the regular glue sticks. I pick up my Gorilla Glue sticks at Walmart. They do cost a little bit more than your regular glue sticks, but I think it's worth it if your projects stay together better. Next, I'm going to take 3 of the wooden heart-shaped ornaments, and I am going to stack them because these are pretty thin and I want it to have a little bit of thickness to it. So I'm just going to stack them together with a little bit of hot glue to hold them. Then I'm going to paint one side of my heart using that ivory colored chalk paint, and I am also going to paint around the outside edge of my heart a little bit, and I'm not going to worry about the cutout sections in the center of the heart. I'm just going to leave those. And then I'll give the heart a little bit of dry brushing as well. I decided I wanted to add a little embellishment to my heart, so I'm going to use one of the little jute hangers that came in the packet of ornaments, and I had this little skeleton key. It's just a decorative little key that I had in my stash, and I'm going to tie that on using the jute twine and just the little hole that's already in the heart to hang it. Before I attach my heart, I want to put a finished looking back on this sign. So I am going to use just some of the brown craft paper that I picked up at Dollar Tree, and I'm going to cut out a piece that's the same size of the sign, and I'm going to glue it on the back just to give it a nice finished look. And because the craft paper wanted to curl up and was a little hard to work with, I decided to use my hot glue gun just to secure the top corners, and then I used a glue stick to glue the rest of the paper. I just felt like this made it a little bit smoother than trying to glue it with only the hot glue gun. Then I'm going to wrap some jute twine around my sign where I had attached the wooden rulers, and I'm going to wrap it about 3 times and then secure it with some hot glue. Now it's time to attach that heart right in the center of my sign with a little bit of hot glue. And then I'm going to add a jute twine hanger back onto this sign. I didn't use the one that it came with because I wanted it to be a little bit longer. And that's all there is to this fun farmhouse Valentine sign that could certainly be displayed all year long. For this next project, I will be using 2 packages of these mirrored wall stickers, as well as a couple of these little unfinished wood palettes. Both of these I picked up at Dollar Tree. And to paint my project, I'm going to be using this Kills brand white chalk paint that I picked up at Walmart. The first thing I'm going to do is glue my 2 little palettes together. I'm going to glue them end to end so that I have one longer palette. And I am using the Super Glue wood glue from Dollar Tree, as well as just a little bit of hot glue to help hold it together while that wood glue dries. Next, I'm going to take my wall stickers and I'm going to peel them off of the paper, and I'm going to stick them on the cardboard that was in the package that they came in, because the stickers are pretty thin, and so I want to give them a little bit of a thicker backing to make them more sturdy. And once I have those stuck on the cardboard, I am going to use an X-Acto knife to cut out my little houses. And you will want to make sure that your blade is nice and sharp. That way you'll get a nice crisp cut and it will just be easier to do. And I did also cut out the little windows and shapes inside of the houses as well. Once I have those cut out, I'm going to use a piece of sandpaper just to get off any of the little rough edges of cardboard and make the sides nice and smooth. The little mirrored stickers do come with a protective film over the top of them, and because I am going to be spray painting these, I don't want to leave that on because it might peel off and then my paint would peel off. So I'm going to remove all of the protective film from these houses as well. Once I remove that film, the surface is really slick and shiny, and so to get my spray paint to stick to it, I am going to take my sandpaper and I am going to sand all of my shapes to rough them up. Then I'm going to take all of my houses and my palette piece and give them a couple of coats of the spray paint both on the front and the back side. Once my paint was all dry, I did notice I had a few places that were still a little bit rough on the edges where the cardboard didn't cut real clean. And again, I think that's just because I didn't have a sharp enough blade in my X-Acto knife. So I'm just using some scissors to clean them up a little bit. And now I can assemble this, and honestly, I had originally planned to glue the houses to the little palette, but then I got to playing around with it, and I actually really like the fact that I could move these around. So I can just put these down in the slots of the palette and move them around, and they sit up on their own really well. And so it's really fun this way because it makes it very versatile and it makes it really easy to store, because if I had glued these on, It would be really difficult to store this if I wanted to pack it away, but this way I can just pull the little houses out and it will store flat, and I love how I can switch this all around. So let me show you a couple of ways that I styled this just to give you a few ideas, but really the possibilities are endless. The first way I styled this was to just add some greenery to the front of it in front of the houses, and I thought this just added just a little bit of color. It makes it real farmhouse looking, and if you don't like the stark white, you could definitely dry brush this. My husband thought I should dry brush it, but I kind of like it the way it is, all white. So really it's just whatever your preference is. I also thought this would be very fun and easy to switch up for holidays, and so here I have added a couple of little heart clips that I got at Dollar Tree to a couple of the chimneys on the houses. It makes it look like little heart-shaped smoke coming out of the chimneys, and then I just added these little fairy lights that I also got at Dollar Tree. They're a pink wire with little red lights, so just some subtle decor to go with the holiday. And since you can take the houses out and move them around, here I have put houses on both ends, and then I've put a candle and some Christmas greenery in the center, and I really love how this looks too. It's just so versatile, and it was so fun to make. For this I am using 2 of these love signs from Dollar Tree. I will also be using this wall sticker I found at Dollar Tree. Now I haven't seen this around a whole lot, so it might be a little hard to find this particular one, but they do have lots of wall stickers available, so you can just choose one that you like. I'm also using a piece of foam board, and you can pick this up at Dollar Tree. And I will also be using the word love from this package of 3 Valentine's words in the galvanized metal that Dollar Tree's carrying right now. I needed a pattern to follow for the words grows here, so I just printed these out in different sizes on my printer and used Microsoft Word and a font I liked, and I'll just decide which size to use as I go along. I'll be using some white craft paint. You can use any kind of paint that you want to paint your sign in any color. And then I will also be using a black Sharpie marker. First I will be removing the ribbon hangers off of the top of my signs, and then I will also be removing the stickers from the back of the signs as well as the galvanized hearts off of the front of the signs. A trick I like to use is to heat up the stickers and also those galvanized hearts with a heat gun or a hair dryer, and this just helps the glue to release and you can remove the pieces so much easier, and it works great on stickers and labels and things. Just be careful, those galvanized little hearts do get hot. Now I'm being kind of careful as I remove these hearts because I don't want to bend them up. I am going to use them in another project that I will be showing you in this video as well. So I've cut my foam board the exact size of the 2 signs, and then I am going to be gluing these signs down onto the foam board, and I am actually gluing the right side of the sign down because I want a flat surface for this project. I don't want to have the grooves that are on those signs. I'm going for a little bit more of a clean modern look and not so much the farmhouse look on this. So I'm using mostly E6000, but I am putting just a little bit of hot glue on this as well, just to hold it right away so that I can continue working on my project. And I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue to the two inside holes where the ribbon hangers were. I will be using the outside holes to create a new hanger, so I'm not filling those, but I'm just putting a little glue in there and then scraping off the excess so that I can paint over that. And you could use wood filler or hot glue for this. Next, I'm going to cut around the design of my wall sticker, and this is just so I can kind of get an idea of the placement and where I want to put it on my sign. Then I'm also going to decide which size of font I want to use for my other lettering and cut that out as well. Next, I'm going to paint my sign, and at first I thought I was just going to paint around the border and save some time, but then I realized that my design actually has spaces between the four sections so that it looks kind of like tile maybe. So I needed to paint down the center anyway, so I did end up painting the whole thing, and I think this is probably the best idea, just to paint the whole thing. Depending on the design of your wall sticker, you may or may not need to use a ruler to help you with the placement of it. My design needs some pretty precise borders and then borders in between each of the pieces, so I am using a ruler to mark it out. And then I'm just going to peel off my wall sticker and place it on the sign. Next, I'm going to take my black Sharpie marker and I'm going to color this love word with the marker. And I tried to do this with paint, but the paint did not stick to the metal very well. You could probably use spray paint, however, it was very cold outside, and so that really wasn't an option for me. So this is what I came up with, just using the black Sharpie marker, and I think it worked pretty well. So this is how I've decided to place my words on the sign, and so I'm going to take that pattern that I cut out, and on the back side of it I am going to color over that with a pencil. Now I realized after I was doing it on my sign that I probably shouldn't be doing that because it did transfer a little bit onto the sign, and I ended up having to paint over that to cover it up. And so just a tip there, don't do this step on top of your sign. Next, I'm going to place my pattern where I want it. I'm going to trace around the letters to transfer that onto the sign to give me an idea where to draw my letters on. Then I'm going to use my black Sharpie marker and I'm just going to trace over those letters. If you have a Cricut machine, you could save some time by cutting this out on vinyl and placing it on your sign. Now I'm going to attach the word love to my sign using some hot glue. To make a hanger, I am going to be using some floral wire that I picked up at Walmart. You can get some wire at Dollar Tree, but it's a lot thinner than this, and you'd probably want to double it up at least. So I'm just taking the end of my wire and poking it through the holes that are already in the sign, and this will make a hole through the foam board so that I can place the wire through it. Then I'm going to go in through the back of the sign and pull it a little ways onto the front and then twist it around a pencil to secure it. Then I'm going to decide how long I want my hanger to be, and I'm going to pull the other end of the wire through the other hole. And once I have the hanger at the desired length, I'm going to trim it off and then twist it around to secure it as well. And that is all there is to this sign. Really easy to put together, and I love how it looks because it's not specifically Valentine's. You could keep this up all year long, and I love the colors of it as well. My next project is super easy, and it only will cost $3 to make. For this, I will be using one of these wooden hearts from Dollar Tree. I'll also be using this wall sticker that I picked up, and it is succulents and roses in the shape of a heart. And once again, I'll be using the galvanized love word. Assembling this project is super easy. I am going to remove the hanger from the heart, and I'm not going to cut it off. I'm just going to push it through the holes because I am going to reuse it. This wall sticker comes in two sections, so I'm going to take the first half and line it up on the half of the heart, and it is larger than the wooden heart, so it is going to overlap all around the edges. Then I'm going to take the second half of the heart and just line it up, making sure that the pattern is aligned, and stick it down as well. Then I'm going to take a pair of scissors and I'm just going to trim off the excess of the wall sticker that's hanging over the wooden heart. Next, I'm just going to carefully poke through the holes in the heart so that I can poke through the wall sticker and make a place to put my hanger back on the heart. Next, I'm going to add the word to the heart, and I decided to use these foam squares. You can get these at Dollar Tree, and this is just going to add a little bit of height and space between the heart and the word and give it a little bit more dimension. This is just an optional step that you can do. You could put the word directly on the heart if you like, but I liked the added dimension that these foam squares gave it. And that's it. It's finished. It's really easy to do, and I think it looks really elegant. And I put mine together with some succulents and some silk roses from Dollar Tree, and I love how this grouping all looks together. My final project is this super simple farmhouse love sign. This board was just packing material in a box of put together furniture that I bought, and I love the finish on it. It's just kind of a laminate finish on it, but it looks like barn wood, and so I'm going to be reusing this for a sign. So basically this was free. You could just use a board that you could pick up at Home Depot or Lowe's, and you could paint it or stain it, but this is what I'm going to use for my sign. And in the craft section at Walmart, I found these letters, and I liked the size of them. I really liked the finish on them. They're painted white, but it's kind of a distressed look, and so I think these are going to go great on that board. I'm also going to be using one roll of this crocheted looking lace ribbon from Dollar Tree. This is great ribbon. I love this for farmhouse type projects. And Then I'm also going to be using those galvanized hearts that I took off of those signs in the first project. So because my board is particle board, I wanted to cover up the edges because it's not very pretty. If you had just a regular board, you wouldn't have to use the lace to cover up the edges. You could just paint it or stain it, but I thought the lace gave it a nice touch. And so I'm just going to attach this using my hot glue, and the finger protectors from Dollar Tree are really great for this because the hot glue will come through the holes in the lace and it's really easy to burn your fingers. So I highly recommend those. Once I go all the way around the sign, I'm just going to trim off the excess ribbon and glue that end down. Then I'm just figuring out the spacing of my letters and my hearts, and then I'm going to attach those to the sign using my hot glue gun. And here's the finished sign. I love this. And I love how these are great. All three of these signs are great for Valentine's Day, but they could also be left up all year long. And I decided not to put a hanger on this sign because I think I'm going to go back to Walmart and pick up the letters to spell out the word home and put that on the other side of the sign and make this a reversible sign so I can just set it on a table or on a shelf or even just on my fireplace mantle.
I hope you enjoyed this video of all of my favorite Valentine DIYs. If you did, please hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to subscribe and set your notifications. And if you did enjoy these projects, I have hundreds of videos on my channel with lots more budget-friendly DIYs. I'll put another one of my favorite videos right here for you to watch next. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a blessed day.